Well, we are in a torrential downpour. It is storming, thundering, lightning. So I've lost work today, so I'm here and I may as well weather a lightsaber. But not just any lightsaber. We're going to weather up one of my Duality lightsabers. Now, this is exclusively available at Vader Sabers, as you can see it here, clean and wrapped and everything. But I'm going to take one of the naked ones here and really weather it up and wrap it in a really cool black piece of like alligator style leather. My goal is to kind of bang this thing up a little bit, maybe scar up the fins and put a cut on top and some scratches and divots all the way through the emitters and everything. And I'm going to bash up and really cut into the pommel. I really liked the way Balin's lightsaber pommel looked in the show. If you, I'll see if I can put a screenshot over here for you. So I really want to add some nice battle damage to this lightsaber since it's a Darkside lightsaber. Now I'm going to start with a green Scotch brush here and just kind of sand down a little bit, scar it up a little bit more. And you can kind of see that you're getting a little bit more of that brush mark, and that's going to help clean off the hilt as well and any kind of finish that might be on it. Or I do think this is kind of raw aluminum. That's what I asked for when they were putting this together. So, but I want to add a little bit more of scuffing and everything and dull it down a little bit more. So that way the chemical aluminum black will take. The more raw and cleaner the aluminum is, the better. All right, so after a few minutes of Scotch brush on the emitters and the pommel, I think we're pretty much ready to go with the weathering. Now, I already know I want to put a cut right into the emitter top there, maybe a couple scars and divots and, everything throughout the hilt as if it's been banged around. So let me get out my protective goggles and my Dremel, and I guess from this point on, just hope for the best. Now, what I'm going to do is just start kind of bouncing the Dremel edge over here right up against the emitter. This is going to add some scuffing, cracks, little divots and stuff like that. Like the tip of this thing has been kind of smacking around the rocks and different lightsabers and stuff have been banging into it. And then we're going to add this kind of scar right across here where I'm going to really dig right into it and crack the top. Now this little cut here, I'm just going to take a little chip out of the top. We're not going to overdo it, but this is going to add some really nice battle damage look to the top of the emitter. And then I'm pretty much just going to continue this whole process throughout the lightsaber. All right, so I'm going to swap the bit out to this more engraving detail tool here. And I'm going to carve some battle damage right into this side panel here. And after that, I'm going to stay on this tool for a little bit and just kind of work my way around the hilts by adding little notches and divots and everything all throughout the emitter. And then we're going to work on the pommel. All right, so here are the results of everything we just did. You can see a whole bunch of scarring and where we nicked up the edges and everything. And from here, I'm going to take a Scotch brush and really dig into the sanding around the edges, because anything that's kind of poking out or sharp from the process we just went to, I really want to sand down so there's no sharp edges. And this works really well. All right, now let's dig into this pommel area. I don't exactly have a pattern or anything that I'm going to follow, but I'm just going to ding up all of the edges and scar up some stuff, make a few slices here and there, just to make it look like this thing's been bashed around on the floor, dropped 100 times, during a fight or anything, or during training. But I did really like that look of the Balin skull, so we're going to kind of emulate that and just cut right into this thing and just really scar it up. I think one of the biggest things about doing a project like this is figuring out that happy balance between it just needs a little bit more or that's too much. So you kind of have to build these things up, build up the weathering, really watch what you're doing. When you hit a point where you're like, all right, this might be enough, just stop. Because you can always add some weathering, see what everything looks like, and if you need to go back and want to add more scarring or more weathering or whatever it happens to be, you could always add more. It's hard once you've cut into one of these things and you look back, you're like, that was way too much. You can't go back. So it's better to do these things little by little and build it up and really look at it while you're doing it. Now I've done a bunch of these, so I kind of know where I'm at with, I feel like it's too much or I feel like it's too little. Someone else might have a complete different preference on too much or too little weathering. So it is a personal thing. It's an artistic choice on where you want to go with the weathering of your own lightsaber. All right, I think we're in a really good place with this. Let's put it back together and we're gonna move on to the actual aging of the metal here, the weathering itself. Now, I'm gonna use a chemical called aluminum black, and what that's gonna do is react with the aluminum and kind of tarnish it, turn it black. So it's an actual chemical reaction and not paint. Now, do keep in mind, this is a chemical, and I do suggest doing it in a well-ventilated room. I have a big industrial fan right next to me, pulling out some of the fumes, and I also have an air filter right next to me. If you have some rubber gloves, I would suggest that as well, but I'm gonna be really careful with this. The chemicals really aren't even gonna get near my hands because I'm holding the handle, and we're actually not even gonna touch the handle itself because we're gonna be wrapping that with leather. But do just keep in mind that if you're working with this, this is a chemical. Now what you're gonna see is that I may have to add a few layers, and that it slowly is turning black over the course of, just a couple of minutes. And I'm layering on the chemical. So I did a first layer and it got a little bit gray. So now I want it much darker. So I'm gonna add another layer of chemical over that. This thing should get pretty darn black. Any spots I see that are just kind of raw, I'm just gonna go back in and just drop a dab of this stuff on there. Let's go back into the little creases over here. Now again, we don't have to worry about the handle because that's getting wrapped with leather. And let's do the same thing to the pommel area. I'm really curious to see how this is gonna come out. I'm hoping I get that same effect that the Balin pommel has. And as you can see, after just less than a minute, this thing has darkened up really nicely. I can't wait to get in there with a green Scotch brush and really kind of dull this stuff back and see what it looks like. All right, I'm just gonna let it sit for about a minute or two and just let the chemical do its thing. I might go back with another coat, I might not, but we'll see. All right, I let it sit for about 2-3 minutes, and that seemed to have done the job. I'm really liking what this looks like. Just gonna go in and dry off whatever's left here, and then we're gonna grab a green Scotch brush and let's start going to town on this thing. Now, these are the moments that you're gonna make a lot of decisions. How hard do you wanna push on this thing? How much of this stuff do you wanna wipe off? And you'll see every little turn here that just a little bit more is coming off. It's gonna hit the edges a lot, it's gonna hit the higher spots. And depending on how hard you push is how much of this material is gonna come off. Now it's one of those things where I took off too much. I could always go back and reapply some more aluminum black and start the scrubbing process over. Right now, we're getting to that point where we can see all the work we just did popping out. All the scarring and everything, that stays darker, and everything we wipe off of it is just allowing that detail to pop out now. This is that point where it actually starts to look like a movie prop. All right, let me give you some close-up stuff to see some of that detail now. All right, this is really looking great. Look at this scar right on the vents there. I love that. All of the details really punching out. Look at this crack down the side there. All of these little battle damage things really brings this to life. Like this came right off the screen. Take a look at the results right on the edges there from bouncing the Dremel along the edges. Check out that little battle damage crack right on the top there. And let's move on down to the pommel because I love the results that came out of this. This looks fantastic. Aluminum black is my favorite chemical to weather up things with. When you have brass, you can actually use brass black. That does the same thing, but it reacts with brass rather than aluminum. So you have a lot of chemical options out there. And there's so many other ones too that I just don't use. A lot of times I do prefer to just use paint. It's easy. You can grab it at a hobby store or something like that, but you get such fantastic results like this. All right, let's move on to wrapping this bad boy. I found this black alligator skin texture that I picked up on eBay. They have fantastic quality wraps. I'll put a link down in the description to them if you want to pick up some wraps or just check out what they have for future projects. But I love the quality wraps they have. Now, the first thing we have to do is measure the wrap out because we have to cut this down. There's enough of material here for 2 wraps, so that's awesome. You buy 1 wrap and you can wrap 2 of your hilts with. But we do have to cut it down. So we're gonna have to mock this up, make a couple of marks and give it a cut. Now, this is super easy to do. Once you've mocked it up, you get to the top, you have the edge of one side right here, right up to the edge of what you want to do. And you're gonna pull the other piece over. So you're gonna mark the leather right where it meets the top of the handle there, and you're gonna pull the other piece over and mark that in the exact same spot where it meets the top of the handle there. And that's your in and out cut marks. So a lot of people use a rotary cutter for this. It looks exactly like a pizza cutter for fabric, but I'm just gonna use my X-Acto knife. This thing is super, super sharp, cuts right through leather like it's butter. And we have a perfectly cut edge right here. And like I was saying, you have a whole other piece to wrap a different lightsaber. To stick this wrap to the hilt, we're gonna use contact cement. It's non-permanent, it's rubbery, it's super easy to clean up if you make a little bit of a mess, and it holds these things beautifully. You could pick these up at your local Home Depot or hardware store or even on Amazon. All right, so what I want to do is now that it's cut and ready to go on, I just want to do one last mock wrap to make sure that it's cut correctly and fits perfectly, and I get yet another feel of how I want to wrap it, because you do want to take your time and make sure that they're evenly spaced and not sloppy looking. So you want to do this a couple times if you have to, just to make sure that you have the feel for this cut. All right, and it's looking like this thing is cut to perfection. Now, this is untouched. We are gonna have to go back and distress it a little bit. Because we can't forget, we have a weathered lightsaber, so we're gonna wanna go back and weather up the leather a little bit so that it looks worn out as well. All right, let's get this wrap actually slapped on this hilt. So I'm going to apply some of this contact cement to the first half of the wrap here, and we're going to stick that onto the hilt. And then I think what I'm going to do is just put some contact cement on the actual handle itself and keep wrapping. Sometimes I would actually just kind of coat like inch by inch as I go along of the wrap, but I think I'm going to try this and just kind of pop it on the handle itself and wrap that way. Now again, if you make a little bit of a mess or some glue comes out and gets on the wrap, it doesn't matter. This stuff is super easy to clean off. You can pretty much just rub it off. But also keep in mind that we are going to be scrubbing up this leather a little bit. So any kind of schmutz that gets on there is just going to be part of the weathering process in the next step. And here's my favorite little last bit to press on there. All right, this went on flawlessly. So let me just grab a towel, and what we're gonna do is just kind of grab onto it and just press around just to make sure that all of the leather meets with that contact cement. So now comes pretty much unreversible decisions. We have to figure out what it is we're gonna do to this wrap and how we're gonna attack it. Now I already know that I wanna go with a Scotch brush. It's pretty easy to do, but we don't wanna go too hard. Now I haven't worked with this piece of leather before, so I don't exactly know what the results are gonna be. So I'm gonna do little by little and then maybe go a little bit harder. I know I wanna grab the edges a lot because that's the highest parts. So I wanna wear those down the most. Now the goal is to kind of scrape off a little bit of the top to show some of the brown under it, like you've worn through the top layer of dye over time. And as time went on, you wore out the edges a little bit and it just looks aged and used. And what you're gonna see now after about a minute or so is that the brown is starting to come through. That top layer of black dye is starting to go away and it's starting to look used, aged, worn out. Now definitely, just like the chemicals or when you're painting or anything, especially something like this, go little by little. Look at it, wear it down. Look at it, wear it down. Because we're at a point where you're not only just kind of scraping off that top dye, but you're starting to scrape into the leather and wear down the edges, and you can't undo that. So the key is take your time. Scrub around a little bit, take a look. Scrub a corner here and there, take a look. I'm absolutely loving these results. I don't want to do too much, but look at these edges here. I love the way the edges are just kind of flaking off. Now I'm going to do just a little bit more here and there, and then I'm going to call it a day, and this project is going to be done. All right. That's it, I'm stopping here. I don't want to overdo this. I think this looks terrific. The edges are worn out. This has some age to it. The whole thing just has a feel like it just came out of the movies, like a real screen use prop. The pommel came out even better than I was hoping. We got some buildup in the corners there. It's all battle damage. I love it. The leather looks really cool and worn down like it's a few years old. You can even go in there on the leather with some burnt sienna as a wash and just add some more texture and detail to that as well. And I absolutely love the top half here with all the battle damage and the weathering and everything, all the scars throughout. This thing has been through hell and back. Well, that's about it. Let's toss a blade on and see what this thing really looks like. All right, that is about it. This is my customized Duality lightsaber, exclusively available at Vader Sabers if you want to pick yourself one up. There's a limited number. There's very few left. If you want to grab one, it could even follow this video step by step if you want to try out this weathering technique. Now, you won't be able to pick up this exact weathered version. This was just one I did for myself on this crazy monsoon of a day that we're having out here because I really wanted to have a really cool weathered up version for myself. But they do offer weathering, so definitely check that out. I'll put a direct link and discount code for you down in the description if you want to check this out. And don't forget to let me know down in the comments what you think of the results. And please help support the channel simply by hitting the like, subscribe, and notification button for upcoming videos so you're notified every time I upload a new video. All right, everybody, I will see you all on the next video. Be safe and kind out there in the world. See ya.